Hi, I'm WTOP film critic Jason Fraley, and all month long we're ranking the best movies in every genre. 30 genres over 30 days, and today we're breaking down the best science fiction movies. Now, when I first think sci-fi, I think of those classics like The Day the Earth Stood Still with that great Robert Wise movie, but also the Bernard Herrmann music that starts with the opening credits with the spaceship coming down, that like Wurlitzer sound. Look it up right now and on YouTube, and I'm telling you, it's just quintessential classic sci-fi. Along the same lines, and also from that same era, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Don Siegel would go on to do Dirty Harry and a bunch of other good movies, but this one is so great and so paranoid too, and also sort of about the social commentary of the era where everyone was looking around and thinking, "You're next." Sort of that McCarthyist paranoia of the day, but with those pods growing the replicas of all of us, Body Snatchers is a must, and some great remakes too. We also get Planet of the Apes. I mean, it was based on the novel, but think about it. You get Rod Serling, who would do Twilight Zone, adapting the script, and then Schaffner directing it. He would go on to do Patton and so many other good movies. But come on, this is just one of those great movies with Charlton Heston and Roddy McDowall. And if you think about the sci-fi genre, you can't not think of that final image of the Statue of Liberty on the beach, which is probably one of the greatest twists in movie history, but definitely in sci-fi. We also get movies like A Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick's classic, and man, talk about a disturbing movie. I can't think of the song Singing in the Rain the same way again, because it's about sci-fi in the future, these gangs, and that great opening pullout on the lead actor's eyeball. He's got the little eye makeup and that music, and there's all that Ludwig van Beethoven music and the old in-out. It's creepy, but it's sci-fi if you think about it. It's how can we reduce crime by making our most hardened criminals, locking them in a chair and looking at the worst footage, Holocaust and murder and everything else, and making them just stare at it with their eyes pried open, and the idea that, and the moral idea, is that actually right? You know, should we regulate crime in that extreme manner, or are we reducing free will? Fascinating science fiction stuff by Kubrick. We also get Solaris, the Tarkovsky movie from Russia. It was remade later, I think by Soderbergh, but go back and check this one out. It requires some patience, and it's a little bit of an ambiguous, mind-blowing ending, but it's just great up in space where he sees an image. Is it a ghost? Is it an alien of his dead wife? We don't know. Something's a little off up there. Inspired so many movies. And then, of course, we get the Spielbergs, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, with that Douglas Trumbull visual effects of the spaceship coming up over Devil's Tower. We had Richard Dreyfuss doing the Mashed Potato Mountain. He's envisioning this. He's like, what is going on here? I think and you get Francois Truffaut, the director, playing one of the scientists here that goes to Devil's Tower. It's just great. And that great 5-note score by John Williams. Dun, 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 dun. It's not like an Independence Day. It is, let's make contact with aliens. So instead of fighting them, the end is trying to communicate. That's sci-fi. And of course, E.T. One of the most immortal children's movie ever. We could have put it in coming of age, of course, or even one of the family categories. But it's just great science fiction. You get E.T. landing and saying, "E.T. phone home." Ouch, Elliot. And the way he like staggers around, I'm just smiling with the Reese's Pieces. A little bit of a Christ allegory too. Spielberg joked about that. He's like, "Oh, a nice Jewish boy making movies with Christ allegories. Watch it. How he finds him in the shed, and then he's like, performing miracles with the flowers. It's pretty. Look at it. But come on, young Drew Barrymore, screaming when she sees him, and then finally, in the end, when he has to leave, I'm in tears when he's like, "Ouch!" It actually kind of scared me for a little bit when they, the NASA scientists like kidnap him and he dies and then he resurrects. I'm telling you, it's this Christ allegory. But in the end, I'm in tears when he's like, "I'll be right here," and the music swells. John Williams, unbelievable score. Them flying across the moon, one of the most immortal images ever. And in addition to Spielberg, also with the classics, rounding it out, Ridley Scott. Blade Runner is one of the all-time classics. He tinkered with it for a long time with a billion director's cuts, and of course it was remade here recently, but man, that original is great. 1982, kind of really pioneered the idea of the gritty urban sci-fi where Harrison Ford is Deckard. The Blade Runner has to hunt the so-called replicants, and in the end there's that great moment where he looks and he goes, and it's just a little tweak of his face, a little glance that makes you think, oh, maybe he's a replicant. And Harrison Ford once told the AFI, they asked him, and he said, I always resisted the idea that he was a replicant, as I suppose a replicant would. Oh, so cool. But of course, Alien, Ridley Scott's best. It's so good. You could have put it in horror, obviously. It's such a monster in the house on the spaceship with the alien coming out of the chest. No one in that scene knew what was going to happen. So those screams, when it pops out and the blood squirts, are real. The actor started convulsing and it popped out. So no one knew that was going to happen. Could have put it in horror, but instead I put it in sci-fi because there's so much. Especially when you think of like Prometheus and all the prequels and all the sequels that were made. I put it in sci-fi because it's sort of I call it science friction, where in space no one can hear you scream. Sigourney Weaver in this, Ridley Scott's best. And I combined it actually with the remake, Aliens, by James Cameron, which is more of an action movie. So considering one was horror and one was action, what was the common one? Sci-fi. It's in your classic sci-fi. Classic sci-fi does not get better than Alien. Now, those are the classic sci-fi, but technology keeps changing, so we need some modern ones too. The science in the science fiction changes. So we get movies like Independence Day. Everyone loves Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith and Roland Emmerich's, sort of the disaster movies. Yeah, it's a disaster movie, but he went on to make so many after that, like The Day After Tomorrow and all those movies. But, this is kind of where that all started. So Bill Pullman's The Speech. Today will be our Independence Day. It's just great stuff. We also get Total Recall. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Paul Verhoeven. Before Verhoeven made Basic Instinct, he made this sci-fi classic based on a Philip K. Dick story, which also brings us to another Philip K. Dick story, Minority Report. I love this. I think it's underrated, probably because it's Spielberg and everybody thinks of all of his, 10, 12, 15 other more famous movies. But if any other director had made this, it would be held up as a masterpiece of sci-fi. It's almost like a future noir, too, if you think about it. But we put it here. It's so great. Tom Cruise with the precogs, the 3 precogs, including Agatha, they can do pre-crime. They can predict crimes that are about to happen, and Tom Cruise has to go solve them and break in and catch the guy before they've even committed a crime. So some cool moral questions there, a dilemma there. And then, of course, one day the ball rolls down and it shows that his own name, Anderton, he himself has committed a crime in the future. So he's not only he goes on the run like The Fugitive, but it's a really cool movie. I love it. We also get Children of Men, Alfonso Cuarón's early 2000s sci-fi movie, where we don't want to give too much of it away, but similar to Handmaid's Tale, sort of this dystopian society where suddenly no one can, everyone's infertile, no one can give birth except for one miracle mom. So he's got to transport her to a safe haven. But the real story here is all of the great Alfonso Cuarón, long single takes, first in the car with Julianne Moore, but then later, especially at the end, in the battle sequence where they're running from house to house. Check out those long takes. You could see what he would do with Gravity and all the other movies after if you look at this great sci-fi movie, Children of Men. We also get District 9, Neil Blomkamp from South Africa. So we wanted to get some of that in there. That's sort of an apartheid commentary if you check that out. We get new ones like Snowpiercer, the Bong movie from South Korea, where Chris Evans, Captain America himself, has to work from the back of the train to the front of the train. And there's different social classes on there. Yeah, it could be action too, but we put it in sci-fi. And then, of course, movies like Ex Machina. I think Alex Garland nailed this. He had written some Danny Boyle movies, but man, Ex Machina is so good. And I actually think that she won, Alicia Vikander won for the wrong movie that year. She won the Oscar for The Danish Girl, which was a fine movie, but to me, her performance in Ex Machina was so much better as the AI. And then Oscar Isaac and Domhnall Gleeson. Of course, it was just a great little erotic sci-fi thriller movie. And then, of course, rounding out the new ones, we also wanted to include Her, Spike Jonze's movie. I've showed it to some people and they just thought it was weird, but I thought it was pretty genius. Joaquin Phoenix falls basically for Siri, for Scarlett Johansson as Samantha voicing the voice in Siri or Alexa or whatever you want to. We all have these Google Homes and things today. The idea of Spike Jonze is, what if you fell for it? What if you fell in love with it? I promise, if you go back and look at it, it was pretty prescient for where the world of online dating is now and the loss of human contact, which we see with Joaquin and Amy Adams at the end of the movie. But it's that whole idea of where are we dating now in the digital age. Great movie, Her, Oscar-winning script. Check it out. Now, of all those great movies, 3 instantly rose to the top of my list. Number 3, Martin, one of my all-time favorites, regardless of genre, Back to the Future. Yes, it's got family elements. Yes, it's got comedy elements. It's got romance elements. But to me, come on, it's science fiction. We have Marty McFly, helped by Christopher Lloyd. So we get Christopher Lloyd helping Michael J. Fox go back in time from 1985 to 1955 and helping his parents fall back in love. Crispin Glover and Leah Thompson. Come on, it's just so great with the what is it? The enchantment under the sea dance. He's got to get them to kiss and fall back in love before he literally is erased from existence. And he looks at the little photo. He, of course, him playing Johnny Be Good, and then you get Biff Tannen saying, "Hello, McFly, why are things so heavy in 1985? Is there something wrong with Earth's gravitational pull?" I could quote it all day. The flux capacitor is fluxing. Save the clock tower. It's just so great. If you haven't seen this, Darth Vader's gonna fall down and melt your brain, as his dad worries about. My density has popped me to you. Go check it out. We could sit here and quote it all day, McFly. It's just so great. I smile every time I think about that movie. But the reason I wanted to mention Darth Vader, that's our segue into number 2, Star Wars. I know a lot of you are saying, why isn't it number 1? Partially because it was almost hard. Is it really sci-fi? The debate goes on and on. There's a lot more fantasy elements too. There's even kind of a space western element too when they go to the cantina and stuff. Lots of desert scenes. But ultimately, I think people think sci-fi here. George Lucas with this movie created, in 1977, created more famous characters than any other filmmakers in one single movie. Think about it. Even The Wizard of Oz doesn't have as many famous characters that came from this. Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, rest in peace, Han Solo, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader, Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO, in the sequel, Lando Calrissian. You forget Yoda doesn't even exist into the sequel. It's hard to believe it is. So it's really, come on, think of all those characters. There's great callbacks to like The Searchers when Luke goes up onto his aunt and uncle's burning ranch. We'll see that when we get to Westerns, the John Ford movie. But it's one of those movies that ties in classic Western, sci-fi, even like Flash Gordon serials, that kind of thing. Calls into all those great callbacks, but also just paved its own futuristic way with all the spaceships and the lightsabers and the space battles. And come on, may the Force be with you. Empire Strikes Back is probably the best of all of them. I'm starting to get tired of it, personally, all the franchises, all the sequels. The first one, they took a 3-year break in between it last time, and now they arrive. I think we had 2 within 6 months recently. Slow it down, roll them out, cut out the little one-offs. Let's see just the episodes with the Roman numerals. Please, I beg you. But come on, you gotta have sci-fi list high. Star Wars has to be high. But number 1, I went with Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yes, Star Wars might be more entertaining, but I wanted to reward the one that I respect for its ingenuity and filmmaking craft. And I think Kubrick directs the hell out of this compared to George Lucas, which is why I gave it the edge. We actually talked to Douglas Trumbull, who did the visual effects for this, and he talked about how they set out to do photorealist images. So he was saying that, computer graphics are the easiest way to date your movie, because obviously the CGI technology gets better every year, and then you look back 20 years at like The Matrix, you're like, that could look better. But for instance, here they use miniature models, hand-painted details, and really just got the shot to look photorealistic. And honestly, I think that holds up. That's why, here we are all these years later. It was 1968, and now we're in 2018, 50 years anniversary. And it still holds up. Those models look real. And to me, it's also the ambitions of it. So yeah, we get HAL 9000 as the, way predicting Siri and Alexa. Imagine if they took over your ship and said, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that." Locked you out of your house or something. That's creepy, and it was way long ago. They also predicted Skype and voice conferencing, Velcro, all this stuff. But to me, it's the ambitions of it. It starts with the dawn of man. Literally the human spark, where we have these prehistoric apes, sort of the Darwin idea. They learn how to use technology to the great, the famous score, the classical music. And then he uses it as a weapon and a tool, and suddenly he tosses the bone in the air. And as it's spinning through the air, we cut, suddenly, the biggest cut, the most time traveled ever in a shot in one single cut, from a bone to a spaceship. And actually, I think it's like a nuclear weapon, so I think it goes from weapon to weapon. But just the idea that there are these alien planted monoliths that look like an iPod, these black rectangles that are planted throughout time, from the dawn of man to us in space on the moon, to then even beyond into sort of almost the psychedelic 60s. I'm sure it was a trip when all those people on acid were watching that, but it still blows our mind. Even if you watch it sober today, it blows our mind at where mankind and technology and science fiction can go. And to me, for all of Kubrick's directing elements, I think it deserves the top slot on my sci-fi list. 2001: A Space Odyssey, the best science fiction movie of all time. See our full top 25 sci-fi movies on WTOP.com's entertainment page. Join us in on the blog and let us know what you think. And tune in tomorrow as we break down my favorite showbiz movies.